Now, we're so excited to have our presentation for this evening. Sam Barr, who you've met, with the Coast Salish Youth Coalition, and Birch Baudet and David Wertheimer are going to do a presentation on dogwoods. And I'm just going to give a little background on how we came to know dogwoods. David was on our Guemes Mountain campaign and Birch on our Kelly's Point campaign, or did I get those mixed up? Mixed up. Both of them, when we had Capital Cam teen teams, each of them was the lead for the family. The other was, of course, always along. So have been long-term supporters of conservation on Guemes and beyond. And when they saw the Guemes Island Wildlife corridor, which runs from Kelly's Point all the way over to Square Harbor, they were like, that's intriguing, and I'll let them tell the story. But they have become what are private conservation landowners, which is a really exciting thing to be, and they have done such an amazing job. If you have not visited Dogwoods, I really urge you to go out there. Their partnership with Sam is just so interesting and visionary, and Sam is going to be explaining that. So I'm going to let them do the talking, but we are so thrilled to have you all here tonight, and they're going to walk through what they're doing with Dogwoods, and Sam is going to walk through how he is partnering with it.
Wonderful, thank you. And Sam will join us in a bit. I'm Birch. This is David. And we dress differently so you could tell us apart. There you go. So thank you for that introduction, Molly. And how many, just show of hands, how many of you have been to Dogwoods on Guemes Island? Wow. That's an impressive number. So some of you are already familiar with it. We'll go into a little bit more detail. So in talking about our relationship to, I'm going to do, oh wait, there we go. In our relationship to the land, we don't like the term owners. We describe ourselves as the current stewards. And that reminds ourselves of the role that we're playing in creating a community, a stewardship community that links the original stewards, the Coast Salish people, to the future stewards, which will include the Skagit Land Trust and the partner that we are working with, Coast Salish Youth Coalition, which Sam will talk about. So we see our work in that vein of handing off the land in better shape than it was. It is forestry land, it has been clear cut, and turning it into something that's pretty remarkable. So our focus today is to provide a really brief overview. We promise not to read our slides too much, and really keep it brief so that you can ask questions of us at the end if you have particular things that you want to know. So I'm going to pass it off to David.
So it's hard to believe that a few weeks ago we celebrated the 5th anniversary of the launch of Dogwoods. It's kind of amazing it's been that long. And this slide lists some of what we've done. And addressing any one of these points could fill the time we have available tonight. So I'll just briefly add a few other things that we've done over the years. We hired a team of scientists to assess the land and develop initial restoration plans, both for the forest lands that are there and the meadowlands that are there. We implemented a strategy to remove noxious weeds, and we began the important work of forging relationships with our Coast Salish neighbors, one of whom is here tonight and will be speaking shortly.
All right, so Molly talked about that corridor that extends from the west shore of Guemes to the east shore. This map shows that, and it shows where Dogwoods fits in that context. So this conservation map really shows the collaborative nature of conservation on Guemes Island, and in particular the work that the Skagit Land Trust has done, the work that the San Juan Preservation has done, and what private property owners have done to fill in some of the gaps that are actual preserves with lands that are managed under conservation easement. I'm just going to stop there because I'm a nerd and I could spend endless time on maps. So I'm going to pass it back to David.
So this next slide shows that in planning for the future, we've crafted a vision to guide our decision-making, which you can see here. Dogwoods is a sanctuary, a sacred space to celebrate personal, ecological, and cultural restoration. A place that fosters love for the land, respect for its original stewards, and connections to nature, ourselves, and our community.
To do that, we have set 3 primary goals. So I'll start with the first one, which is to conserve and maintain a diversity of forest, wetlands, scrubland, and edge habitats. I'd mentioned that these lands were forestry lands. A lot of them had been clear-cut. In the 1960s, most of the land was almost entirely cut, with the exception of some stands of cedars. And so we want to make sure that we're protecting a full suite of different kinds of habitats to provide a home for wildlife, to create spaces for different kinds of plants. As we implement this conservation vision, we'll be working with the Coast Salish Youth Coalition on their vision, which features a food forest, and Sam can talk about that. And so right now we're taking a very active role in stewardship. We are planting plants. We are creating clearings. We are removing noxious weeds. And we want to, again, make this land healthier and better than it has been.
And we have created, thanks to our neighbors Jimmy and Lou Lemieux, who are former trail builders, they have created 2.3 miles of loop trail, which many of you have walked, that are crisscrossed by about 3/4 of a mile of old logging roads that have been converted to trail. And that's allowed the broader community into the woods for a variety of different activities.
Moving backwards, let's move forward again. And then this final goal that we're going to talk about today is centering Coast Salish peoples and practices in the active stewardship and use of the preserve. That was something that was important to us from the very start of creating the preserve. It was our intention to honor those original stewards and who are our friends and neighbors on Guemes Island. Sam Barr was one of the first people we walked through with his wife Erin. Sam helped, while he was working with the Samish Nation, create a planting list of culturally important plants that we prioritized in our restoration efforts. We've, over the years, and the relationship building takes time, we've invited members of the Samish Nation Education Committee, Chilang Committee, which is their culture committee, and their natural resources departments to visit and use the preserve. And those relationships really blossomed last year when a group of carvers led by Julian Sultan Fernandez, who many people know as Bill Bailey, who's a master carver, who organized a group of other Coast Salish carvers, but also, importantly, members from the community who wanted to participate in this remarkable project. Those of you who are on Facebook and follow us on the Dogwoods of Guemes page will see pictures of the welcome figures, which were just completed last week. So they are not included in this slideshow because they surprised us by coming in before the ferry outage happened to get the job done. And then we'll close with.
And thinking about the time beyond our time as stewards and recognizing the importance of all 3 goals that we have for Dogwoods, we've been developing a plan around a collaborative partnership between the Skagit Land Trust and the Coast Salish Youth Coalition. We intend to gift a 10-acre inholding to the Coast Salish Youth Coalition as a base for their programming and we hope, the site for a future longhouse. The Skagit Land Trust would own, The Skagit Land Trust would own and manage the rest of the preserve, provide access to the public, and work together with the coalition to implement a stewardship plan that centers the indigenous knowledge and wisdom and practices. We met a few weeks ago to begin that conversation. There was actually a slide in the previous set of presentations. Oh, it's there. There we go. There we are. And are excited to continue these talks in the month ahead. And now I'm going to turn it over to Sam, who is going to talk to you more about the coalition and the work that is underway that he and Erin, his wife, are leading.
All right, so I'd like to start my portion with a message from my Auntie Rosie. Some of you may know her, Rosie Caillou. Quistania is her traditional name, and she sent a message for me to read. She says that Birch and David are wonderful people who have done a great deal for Guemes Island, that they have turned the community around in such a good way. And her, speaking as a conduit for the ancestors, Rosie tells us that the ancestors are in heaven with tears of joy about this project. She also wants to thank the Skagit Land Trust and all of you members for being caregivers of her ancestral lands on Guemes and Skagit County. She said that her grandfather was born there and that his spirit is healed now as things come full circle through the partnership and working together that is happening on those lands. She said that the trust is known among the ancestors as chiefs of the soil, which is a very honorable title given only to leaders with great integrity. She says that she and her community don't want to take anything away. They just want the freedom to continue to partner in building something special, as you have all been doing so far. So. And then I wanted to share a little bit with you all about the Coast Salish Youth Coalition. So it's a newly independent 501c3 nonprofit with 100% tribal board. It was founded in 2017 under a fiscal sponsorship with the Madrona Institute on Friday Harbor. And it started out as a summer youth stewardship corps, so really similar to AmeriCorps, but specifically for high school aged tribal youth. And we would go out into the San Juan Islands, partner with public agencies to do restoration projects with a cultural focus. So basically doing the same kind of stewardship that our ancestors have done for thousands of years. So not just simple trail work for public access, but also trying to restore ecosystem gardens, which is really at the heart of stewardship for tribal people. And we have served youth from Saanich, Lummi, Samish, Port Gamble, Sklallam, Jamestown Sklallam, Swinomish, Stillaguamish, and Tulalip. And like I said, we have a all indigenous tribal board that guides the program, and it's also that's from 5 different Coast Salish tribes. And we really started this program as a nonprofit so that we could serve all local tribes equally and not be really tied to a single tribe, but to provide opportunities for intertribal collaboration and also cross-cultural collaboration with our partners, with people who are new to this land, that are now friends and collaborators and part of this land as well. And so these are just a couple of pictures from some of the projects that we've done. We have worked with national parks, and so the cedar tree there, we're doing an inventory of a cedar grove at Liquanung, which is American Camp on southern San Juan Island. So taking an inventory of trees so we could track their health and monitor them for future cedar bark harvest. And then we've also done water quality testing at Hummel Lake Preserve on Lopez Island. And then these are a couple of pictures from Dogwoods. Actually, we brought intertribal youth out to Dogwoods quite a few springs ago now, and we harvested cedar roots. And then that same weekend, we actually made a clam harvesting basket out of those cedar roots from Dogwoods. And cedar roots are surprisingly strong. They're really small. They look like the size of just a piece of twine, but they hold up the entire tree. And so they're amazingly strong, right? Because they hold up that entire tree. And so you can practically hammer in a nail with this basket. It's really sturdy. And we use these in the intertidal, so rocky, sandy, muddy environments, and fill them up to the brim with clams. And then there's holes in the basket so you can actually dip it in the seawater and use it as a strainer to clean off the clams before you bring them in to whatever kitchen that you're going to cook them in. And we also use these baskets. We weave them a little bit tighter, and we use them for harvesting the shawl, the camas, because then all the bugs and the rocks and dust kind of falls out as you're walking around the prairie. And it's so rewarding. I can't even explain the connection that these youth feel when they return to their land, but they actually put their hands into the dirt, and then they culminate with a real project and real skills that our people have been doing forever out here. And it really provides a multi-thousand-year meaning to why we do this restoration work, to why these environments are important. And so, as I said, recent developments, our nonprofit went independent. We have our own board, representation from Cowichan, Mitchell Bay Band, Swinomish, Samish, Tulalip, and Stillaguamish. Some of our main events are a camas bake, which draws membership from 11 different local tribes, really strong representation from about 5 tribes, with government support from those tribes, where they set up camp at a 4-day event to harvest camas bulbs and process them and do a 48-hour earthen oven cook process in a traditional way. We dig a hole in the ground, start a fire, line it with rocks that get red hot, and then there's a stack of vegetation that we put in there with the camas bulbs in the middle, and then it steams in the ground like that for 48 hours. It's like a traditional crock pot kind of thing. And then when the camas comes out of there, all the starches have caramelized over that slow cooking process, and it actually tastes like maple and brown sugar, but it has a earthy, smoky flavor to it as well. It's just amazing. And camas is such an important traditional food that really has kind of been hasn't been celebrated as much as other foods like salmon. But calorie for calorie in the traditional diet, they're almost equal, because they can both be preserved for winter use and traded, and they can both be harvested in extremely large quantities in just a single month. And then you have food all year long. So it's a pretty beautiful life way. And when we do this ceremony, it's a 4-day event. And once we start that fire, we keep it going for that entire time. And so we take shifts around the clock and have really fun conversations at 3 a.m. And then we also do a challenge paddle. That's another real focal point of programming. Is we do canoe journeys that are intergenerational, and we load up all of our gear into the canoes. So really a small village can fit in tribal canoes. We have pop-up canopies, camping gear for 10 people, picnic tables, Yeti coolers. All this stuff fits inside a cooler. More gear than you can put in a cargo van. And we go from island to island like this and travel completely off-grid. And then we do restoration workshops as well. And so this is a workshop that we did with the San Juan County Land Bank, doing forest fire fuels reduction, and also creation of biochar, which is a traditional soil amendment that used to be done from indigenous prescribed burns before federal policy really limited the ability to introduce fire to the landscape. And so these are all things that we do to relearn these practices in tribal communities as well. And our program recently acquired a canoe, and its name is Tsapoyok, and that means great grandparent. And one of the things that is really special about this word is that it's shared between the Northern Straits and the Lachute dialects. And is why that's so important is because a great-grandparent would have descendants in multiple tribes. So that word had to be shared between language groups, because you'd have great-grandchildren in all of these different language groups here. And so it's a word that speaks to our ancestral shared lineage between all the tribes that we work with, and recognizing that we're all related, and we have a shared goal of saving the environment. And I have a couple of project pictures that I wanted to share with you. At the Camas Bake, once we start that 48-hour cooking process, we just have to keep that fire going and then hang out with each other. And so one of the days, we do a workshop day. And so each tribe that comes brings a different craft workshop that they host. And one of the things that we did last year was we had a mural painting workshop. And so this is a design of Skagit, and that's the Northern Straits word for otter. So it's a sea otter design in a spindle whorl shape. And we had about 30 different youth paint on this mural. We have stencils put down. You can see the stencil there on the first picture. And so we got to have all these tribal youth come and take part of painting this mural. And then at the end of the event, we had this just beautiful piece of artwork, which is now at the Lopez Island Museum. And so these are some pictures of our Camas Bake, and you can see the clam basket there that was weaved at Dogwoods full of camas bulbs. And then this is a couple pictures from the Challenge Paddle Canoe Journey. So we stopped off on Shaw Island on this day, and our lunch was freshly harvested oysters off the rocks, and we started a fire on the beach below the high tide line, cooked up some oysters on the rocks, and then at the end of the day, the tide just came up and washed it all away. It's just such a beautiful way to get youth outside and really connect with nature. And these are the tribal canoes, 3 of the canoes that traveled on the Challenge Paddle Journey. And so when we think about the future of the Coast Salish Youth Program, we want to find roots for the program. And by that, I mean that it makes me think about when we first started the program in 2017, we worked on public lands a lot. We worked with national parks, we worked with BLM, and like we've been talking about now, we might have a harder time getting some of those grants in the next 4 years. But another struggle with that, other than funding, is that when we bring our people back to the land to really put all of our effort into this, our blood and our sweat and our tears, we have mixed feelings when we do it in national parks, especially because there's tens of thousands of visitors there. So it kind of feels like we're restoring our own lands just for it to be loved to death, for lack of a better term, by tourists from all around the world. Not that we want to keep people out, but there is a certain level of sacredness when things don't have tens of thousands of people going through them every single day. And so we really want to find a place for our program where we can put these practices into effect and have it really benefit the youth, where they can see it for generations after generations, where we can invite people in to share about the beauty of our culture, but have some amount of control of that, to have some amount of privacy, and to be able to establish roots and a home base. And so one of our ideas is to partner with our friends at Dogwoods on Guemes Island, and we have a section of that property to be set aside for the Coast Salish Youth Coalition, to really make a home and to practice all these stewardship techniques of thousands of years of stewardship practices, which myself and many of my tribal cohorts have been spending our lifetime trying to relearn, reading so many sources that we can. So many of these chains of knowledge have been broken by boarding schools, reservations. All of our tribal people have been put onto different pieces of land and been told that we're not related, that we should actually compete with each other for limited rights which are offered in the treaty. And it's created political dynamics that make collaboration difficult sometimes. So Samish in particular, which I'm a Samish tribal member, that name, Saamish, actually translates to the giving people. And on Samish Island, there used to be a longhouse that was mentioned earlier tonight. And when that longhouse was dismantled, a lot of the people from that village went to Guemes Island. And this is a really important piece of history because a lot of tribal people at that time were being pushed on to reservations. And those reservations had Indian agents, which did their best to extinguish cultural practice. Canoes were intentionally destroyed, longhouses were intentionally dismantled, ceremonial practices were specifically banned. It wasn't until the 70s the tribes had the freedom to practice their own religion. But Guemes Island is a place that people went to after the Samish Island Longhouse was dismantled. And the reason that they did that is because Guemes Island was sort of off of the mainland, and it was off of a reservation. And there was a longhouse, a village over there, Kunkwangala, on West Shore, Guemes Island, that was one of the last longhouses in this area that was not on an Indian reservation. And that longhouse actually persisted for quite a while, up until 1905. And so that was a place that was intertribal. It was open invitation for tribes to come and practice their ceremony. For tribal families that still had canoes that weren't destroyed, they knew that they could travel to Guemes Island and be accepted by the Samish families and Sklallam families, Upper Skagit families, Tulalip families, and Swinomish families that all lived there together. And it was a really beautiful story of collaboration that, that my Auntie Rosie has left with me and inspired me to really lean into these cross-cultural collaborations to find strengths between cultures for the common good. And so the way that that longhouse actually existed was a marriage between a Samish family and a incoming settler American family. And it was the settler families that helped the wife's tribal family navigate the Homestead Act to be able to acquire that traditional village site under this policy that was really set up for settlers and pioneers. And so they were actually able to acquire this property using that framework, and that's how they kept that village alive for so long. But they didn't realize that just because they owned it didn't mean that they actually owned it, that they had to keep up on taxes and show that they improved the land. And so eventually the land was repossessed, and they lost that property. But kind of little twist of fate is that property is actually back in tribal hands now. My great-grandmother actually purchased it a few years ago, and it's now a fifth-generation property that's in my family. And we've done canoe journeys there as well, too. And so something that's really special about Guemes that is completely in line with the Coast Salish Youth Coalition is that there's a deep intertribal history there that has a freedom of cultural practice that isn't under a government, not under a tribal government reservation, not under a federal government or a state government. And so we have a dream to continue that legacy of collaboration on Guemes Island for everyone. And certain events that we want to have there might be private events that are sacred and are just open to tribal families. But there are also other events where we can celebrate shared values, bring people in, certain resources that we can process and share. One event that we have coming up this year is a cattail harvesting and crafting workshop. Cattails grow like grass. They're literally a grass. You can't over-harvest cattails. And so we really want to invite all the island families in to learn about that resource together. There are other resources like cedar bark that is a 700-year regeneration cycle. And so that is a sacred practice that we want to hold a little bit more closely. But so that's just a little bit about our dreams for this place. And I want to thank you all for allowing us the opportunity to share and really want to explore future ways to collaborate between the Skagit Land Trust, Dogwoods, and the Coast Salish Youth Coalition. So thank you.
Thank you, Sam.